will then will extend the case of government by talking about jobs that are of great value to society. I will concretize how the state should define jobs that are of great value to it, and by sending this message that necessary to improve how society look at low-level employers, Mr. Chair, and how our proposal actually elevates their value in society. But before I proceed to my extension, please allow me to rebut some points of Gano. Because Gano told us, Mr. Chair, that you know what, in cases when the company faces constraints, financial constraints, and what may have you, they can just adjust salaries. Nonetheless, they can just close their companies. But ladies and gentlemen, let us examine how do they adjust these salaries. They adjust the salaries by reducing the salaries of the low-level employees as well. Fine, they might reduce the salaries of the CEO, but the proportion of the amount of reduction does not compensate the amount of hardship low-level employers will have to suffer because of the reduction made, Mr. Chair. When in fact, from the get-go, we could have just slimmed down the fat cat salaries and used the slimmed down money as a savings account in cases where the company faces financial constraints. Yes, we can see there are companies who are capable, but history told us, Mr. Chair, that recession happened. History told us that there are companies who are incapable of cushioning their problems, Mr. Chair. This is the very moment where the state is given legitimate right, and it's legal and it's true that the state should step in because it is of the primordial value of the state to protect low-level employees who, by the way, are of great value to society. Before I proceed, yes, ma'am.
If that's the context, you are suggesting that the state should help these corporations in terms of like bailing them out and a lot of things. Isn't that already existing in the status quo?
Ladies and gentlemen, bailing out is a different debate because there are a lot of detriment that are caveat to bailing out. Specifically in this debate, let's talk about what the state can do from the get-go, Mr. Chair. Because when you bail out, necessarily there will be, that's a post-financial constraint scenario. What we are so concerned from the government bench is to prevent these things from happening. Now let's talk about the potential of DPM. DPM will tell you, Mr. Chair, that there is a necessity for us to elevate the value of these low-level employees in society. Because if you look at it, these CEOs are receiving excessive amount of salary. Never mind that if we use a cap of $200 per month, $200 per month is already very huge amount to suffice whatever luxury an individual can get. Why do we need more than that, Mr. Chair? That is the very contention of government. If we set a maximum salary huge enough to allow these individuals to you know what, feel they're being CEO, they're being responsible of the future of their company, why are we so afraid to put a cap to that salary, Mr. Chair? We also want to emphasize in today's debate that for instances wherein these CEOs are also stockholders of the company, we do not encroach to the profits, Mr. Chair. They can just, split profits at the end of the day. But the salary, the amount of compensation that you give to these individuals vis-a-vis the amount of work that they do, Mr. Chair, is necessary for it's necessary for the state to define this. Because at the end of the day, this will be of great value. So that the state can actually define the amount of work that you do should be compensated by the amount of salary that you receive. Last point.
That is suggesting that the state is the agent that should be the one morally arbitrating what is a good job and a bad job. I don't think that's fair.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this society, government does not tell you that by the amount of, by adding maximum salary, that necessarily the state is already defining what's good job and what's bad job. What we are only telling you, the state will define what is good work and what is bad work, Mr. Chair. We need to say that it is the amount of work that you do, not exactly the type of job that you do, Mr. Chair, then necessarily you should be afforded the compensation that is due to you. Because Gano told us, Mr. Chair, that you know what, the state should not, encroach the sovereignty of a company, because the company has absolute authority over its jurisdictions and authorities, because being a free market at that, it is afforded by the state with those rights, Mr. Chair. But we tell you that companies are never really fully autonomous in status quo, Mr. Chair. Never mind that the state defines which companies has to pay more taxes, Mr. Chair. Never mind that the company by pollution, whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen. It only goes to prove that if the state finds these things necessary to improve what's in society, then the state can step in. Now, with that coming from the opening government, that necessarily we have to remold society and we have to teach individuals that there is a need to respect each levels of job. That if the job that you do is necessarily of lower value, like if the job that you do, ladies and gentlemen, is necessarily low level, it does not mean that you should be paid less as well. We only want to tell you, Mr. Chair, that we are not saying that if you're the CEO, you will receive as much money as a normal laborer can do. What we only tell, Mr. Chair, is that it should be relative to the work that you do, Mr. Chair. For example, in the Philippines, it's our context, all CEOs should receive the same amount of salary. We do not define what that salary is, ladies and gentlemen. And in status quo, if all laborers do this job, they will receive the same amount of salary as well, Mr. Chair. Because at the end of the day, we tell you that the state defines necessarily that if it's the amount of job that you do, then that will be the amount of salary that you will receive, Mr. Chair. At the end of the day, government here is successful in proving to us, Mr. Chair, and to this noble house, that the state indeed has legitimate right for it to define the maximum salary and to cut the salaries of CEOs, Mr. Chair, and other employers in the company. This is necessary because the amount of savings that we can get from this can necessarily cushion whatever financial constraint it will face in the future. We have to do this, Mr. Chair, because we want to protect the low-level employees. And on top of that, Mr. Chair, by giving them maximum salary, we elevate their value in society. That today, not the salary will no longer define the job that you do, Mr. Chair, but the amount of effort that you put forth to your job, and with that, we open our case.